Good afternoon. Good morning, good evening, whatever it is, whatever it might be. Back with another exciting, action-packed, fun-filled 425 show. So, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Glad you're all here. Glad I could be here. Sadly, I'm alone. Don't have any of my jovial friends here with me today. But we're doing everything we can to change that. So I'm optimistic we're gonna get back to the same kind of silliness and madness that you've all come to know and love about this show. But yeah, so anyway, how's everyone doing? Trooper, Rocket Man, good to see both of you on YouTube or on Twitch. Good to see all of our friends calling in from all around the world. Oh, let me turn that down a little bit. That music shouldn't be that loud. So let's see what's happened here. How's this? Any better? Still too loud? Let me know. I'm gonna drop it down a little bit. I'll drop it down a little bit more. Shouldn't be that loud. Oh no, that music. Sorry. You'd think we had done this before, but apparently not. So yeah, sorry. So we got some new graphics. If you haven't seen them, I guess if you didn't see the new graphics, we have some new ones. And so it's taken a little bit of growing pains to get these switched. So I think now we're good, right? Is the animation music not playing anymore? I think looks like we're good. So anyway, so last week we talked a little bit about the EPM hackathon that Shannon's been working on and getting started. Of course, that kicked off last week. EPM being Entra Permissions Management. I don't actually think we're supposed to call it EPM because I'm sure there's another product at Microsoft that's already called that. But this is sort of the month of EPM. So this month there's a hackathon, which is at 425.show. You can go sign up for it at 425.show whack EPM-hackathon. I'm building a team out there to do some stuff. We're going to get into what I'm going to build for the hackathon today. And in fact, after talking to some folks this morning, I think there's not going to be like 3 different things we want to do for the hackathon, but that's fun because that means we'll have lots of new and interesting stuff to do. So be sure you sign up for the hackathon there. There's swag, there's gifts, there's prizes, there's all sorts of fun stuff you can win. Even if you join a team that a Microsoft employee is working on, you can still win. So you don't have to worry about that. So yeah, join us, come and help us make EPM better. So if you're not familiar with EPM, it's Entra Permissions Management, formerly known as CloudKnox before it was acquired. But the whole thing is about locking down all of your permissions, because of course, if there's anything we know, it's that permissions are constantly sort of in trouble. Overprivilege, underprivilege, the wrong privilege at the wrong time for the wrong folks, all that sort of stuff. Lateral movement, standing privilege, least privilege access, all the buzzword bingo documentation soup that everyone likes to give you. EPM helps bring a little bit of sense to that across all the different clouds, like AWS and Azure and GCP, all these different places. So, it's a pretty new product for us here because it's just recently acquired, and of course there's the rush to get it out, get it available, make sure people can use it. And so because of that, there's certain things that we thought might be fun to do for the hackathon. Sadly, there are no publicly facing APIs today, in the sense of official APIs, but we'll come back around to that in a minute. There are no publicly facing APIs, and so a hackathon originally was sort of like, wait, you want to do what? Like, how are you going to hack on something that doesn't have any APIs? But what we do have is a couple of cool ideas around ways we can make it better. And so the first thing we're thinking about is a Chrome extension, which we started on. We sort of published the stub of that last week. That's something we started on, and we're going to continue down the Chrome extension path. And so the thought was, well, let's do something like a Rap Genius, Genius.com style thing where we can sort of make annotations in the UI. Just let anyone who's using the Chrome extension make annotations in that UI. Second interesting thing, which actually just came up this morning, is, and kind of in that same vein, is we've got part of the sort of like analysis and analytics that you can go through is what permissions does somebody have, and permissions being, it isn't just this person's in this role or this person's a super admin or global admin or whatever. It's what can you do in that role? What are the actual, like, what are the resources you have access to, but then what can you do to those resources? Can you change a VM password? Can you reboot the VM itself? Can you RDP into the VM? Like, all of those things are different permissions. And, some folks never use them. Or they may have a ton of permission within a role, and they may only use a very small amount of them. However, the roles generally, and the securables or the permissioned items within those roles tend to be somewhat opaque. It's whatever name the developer gave it. And so that can be a little bit confusing too. So that got us down the road of, well, what if we were to do something like, let's go read the resource provider data from Azure, and ideally AWS and GCP, however they do their permissioning sort of systems. Let's go read that and publish that metadata into this EPM portal so people can see it. So those are three things we're going to get into today. The hackathon runs until the end of January, and so we're probably going to be doing this style of thing every week, every Tuesday, ideally. For the next few weeks, maybe even every Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to be doing this for the next few weeks to try to get these submissions ready so we can submit them into the hackathon. Feel free to do anything that you want with EPM in terms of the hackathon. You don't have to do any of the things we're talking about or working on here. But of course, we'd love it if you did have any kind of a submission. We think that'd be great. Discord is sort of our main jumping off point. So if you're not in Discord, make sure you get there today. We're going to have some channels and stuff related to this hackathon, so you can go in there and get help and ask questions and whatever. And I sincerely hope that all these links still work, seeing as there's so many different ones. So anyway, okay, so let's get into the first couple of these things, and maybe start building something today. I don't know. At least have a design and a plan for what we're going to build over the next few days, and we're going to put some of this into and we'll go build our GitHub project so that anyone who wants to join can go out and start contributing some code. So let me get this. Let's get these screens up here. So we can get to work. Okay, so let's look at our first one. The first thing, I know we got some new ones. Fuel, I'm telling you, like, hey, the music is the same. Don't be betrayed. The music is still the same. Okay, so the Google-like colors, Fuel. Google doesn't have a monopoly on bright colors, thank you. But our whole security group got rebranded. So the Microsoft security group sort of as a whole has a whole new, branding language, whatever. Has a whole new branding scheme, and that branding scheme is bright colors. Bright colors for happy, good things, like hacking on Microsoft products, for example. I think if it was like bad news, like we were looking at like, breaches and stuff like that, then I think you're supposed to use like dark colors, like blues, like and reds and oranges and stuff, like things that get people excited. Anyway, yeah, so we have new colors. I kind of like the new, personally, I kind of like the new vibe. I think it's cool looking. But, I'm a sucker for bright colors too. So that's how I ended up getting married, because my wife was wearing this bright sparkly thing when I met her. Anyway, so the things we're going to look at. First thing on our annotations. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar. It does go with the light mode and VS Code. I understand. I know. I knew someone was going to say that. There are dark versions. I'm just not. It was kind of a last minute rush to get this ready before the end of the calendar year. So. Fuel's a red mode enjoyer. I agree. I personally, I like red. I think it looks cool, especially when it's with other bright colors, but I digress. So the first thing is annotations. Now, I don't know if anyone here is familiar with like rapgenius.com or genius.com. I'll be honest, I'm surprised at the number of folks who have said to me, what is that? I've never heard of that. So let's go take a quick look. So the cool thing about Genius is that it's crowdsourced like knowledge about like the meanings behind lyrics. I know it's very specific, but so if we go pick a song, and we'll just use their chart. So I hope there's nothing too offensive in here. You click one of these, and it tells you what it gives you people's interpretations of these lyrics. Okay, now that's not to say people's interpretations are always correct, but nonetheless, they're here, and they've got simple stuff like, oh, there's a video, and it might have some quotes from different places. It's got pluses and minuses, so you can, oh, I really like this example, I really don't, right? So the thought is, well, what if we did something like this, where we let people annotate web pages, only instead of it being, a website that's annotated, it would actually live in a Chrome extension. The Chrome extension would be the thing that stores the annotations. I know there's been other stuff sort of like this out there in the past, which I think would be kind of cool if we could find one of those and sort of build from it. But nonetheless, I mean, it's basically, like, I don't know, I'm going to age myself here, but way back in the day, we would get, we'd have internet from like Net Zero and AOL and Prodigy and all these little providers. And back in the Wild West of the 90s, people would install these like browser extensions essentially, and they would like swap out ads. So it's like, we were going to go add ads to a page that didn't have it, or worse, we're going to take the ad off of the page that was already there and put our own in there. Somebody else paid us for. I mean, we're kind of doing that, only it's not with ads, right? Google search bar. Like, we're going to do pretty much that, only it's not going to be for malicious purposes. It's going to be, hopefully, at least, to help people. So let's go take a quick look at the EPM portal. If you don't have EPM, there's a trial you can get, that does trial-y things. It lasts 90 days. Go get an Azure AD trial too at the normal place. We used to have a command in here, which I really hope we still do. Doesn't look like we do anymore, sadly. There's the Microsoft 365 developer site will give you essentially a full-blown Azure AD with all the trimmings and all the M365 mailboxes, all that sort of stuff. P2 licenses, all that stuff. So you can do that for free. So you can go out and try this sort of stuff. So we'll start the Entra portal. We'll go over here to permissions management. This is going to take us to EPM, right? Now, this is a sample environment that some folks here have built. I'm going to use this to show us a few things, but we're going to go back into my environment because I don't want to break any of their stuff. It looks like I'm going to have to sign in again anyway because, that seems to be the only problem. You've got like 19 accounts on your machine that you gotta sign into all these things all these different times. While I'm waiting on this to load for this too long of a duration, Shannon's got some friends of ours in LATAM who are going to be doing some streams in the coming weeks. So be sure to keep an eye out for that. If you've got any friends who speak Spanish or Portuguese, who might be interested in checking it out, some of our friends are going to be doing some streams on that later in the week. Later this month or later into February. So this is our sort of primary dashboard for EPM. Now, when you first sign up for your trial, you're basically going to get dumped into the settings thing because you've got to get all your stuff connected, right? And so that getting connected means creating AWS SSO accounts, or it means creating Azure Service Principals, or whatever GCP's equivalent is. I haven't hooked a GCP up to this yet, but primarily Service Principals and the like. So there's an onboarding thing. The problem is when you get here, when you first sign up, this is the page that you get to. So if you don't know, if you've never used it before, and you're not following through some kind of a tutorial, you're going to get here and be like, well, okay, like now what, right? And that sort of was one of the impetus. It was kind of the impetus for getting this started. Pull up my other window here. And so this other window is the beginnings of this Chrome extension. The Chrome extension, of course, is something you can go download and fork. It's out in our 425 show set of repositories. Go fork this if you want to go work on your own version that does whatever you want. And then I've got my own version that we'll use for forking this, which we'll get ready today. So if we look at this here, this is the screen that you're sort of dropped to. And if you don't know what a data collector is, you'd say, well, okay, so create configuration, cool. So we go click this button and we're gonna have to go do some stuff. Okay, that's fine. But generally speaking, if you don't know what a data collector is, what's an authorization system as it pertains to this? Like, all of that's fairly unclear because it's all sort of the new vocabulary that's within EPM. So what I want to do, and of course we're all open to interpretation here, but the thought is we take this and we just put a little box that comes out on a hover, right? Really simple. Like, when we hover over a certain item, that certain item we're just going to get some more information about it. Okay, so that's the first thing. We're going to use some CSS selectors to attach essentially hover items to different things inside of this, right? So that's the first one. Now, I have nothing onboarded, so there's not really anything else I can do here. So let's go back to the other environment for a second. So the second thing we want to look at is in this in the analytics sort of tab, if you want to call it that. So in analytics, there's all this stuff that happens. Let's go to Azure because, of course, we know Azure. One other thing that's annoying is the filters don't auto-apply when you choose them, so that's something else we can implement. However, so if we look at this, though, we get this user. This user's got like a bright red score, so that must be bad, I guess. Like, it seems like it's bad because it's red, and it says high, so that must be a bad thing, right? And hovering over it, you get some different information. But what's interesting is if you look at this person, this Martin Booth, who's a fictitious person, this person has 81 permissions, like actual things that they've used, right? And anyone who's used Azure is going to be familiar with this format, this Microsoft.authorization, for example, Microsoft.compute. These are Azure resource providers. So the resource provider is essentially the bucket of code that makes Azure provision and manage resources. And so if you deploy an Azure resource, it will be deployed via a resource provider, right? And each of those resource providers is where these things are cataloged. So for example, in this one, and I hate that this interface is really not conducive to sharing it, is it? Because it's dark and it's gray text on a dark background, on a darker gray background. There are like 7 shades of gray just in this little box right here. Maybe I'll make it bigger. We'll see if that makes it a little bit easier to read. So we're looking at Microsoft.compute, and we've got things like begin, get access, action. So this means somebody access a disk and use this permission. So our user here, this fictitious Martin Booth, yeah, there's no light mode fuel. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. There's no light mode in here. And I get it. There's lots of other stuff they're working on, but there's no light mode. Maybe that's something we could build with our Chrome extension is a light mode. We'll just invert all the CSS. So let's go. Let me get back to our permissions here. So we'll go back and look at Martin's permissions. These are the ones, but you notice 12,000 unused permissions. And so you think, well, these are all a bunch of things that a customer could, you may want to, control or at least prevent. So they haven't used any of the AADIM ones, for example. I agree, Fuel. I mean, I'm completely in agreement with you. I'm not a big fan of the. I am not a big fan of the material. Was it the Google material theme or whatever? But it's on some level it's enterprise software, so it still has to kind of be enterprise software. But it's okay. We'll come back around to it. So anyway, my thought is with all of these. Azure AD resource providers, Azure resource providers, not Azure AD ones, all of this, at least a vast majority of this metadata should exist, right, in the resource provider. For what is a Azure data SQL Server registrations delete, like that metadata should exist somewhere. So the second thing I wanted to tackle is let's go find that, which presumably is either going to be in the docs somewhere and maybe in the API somewhere. I'm almost certain it's in the assemblies that ship with the CLI or in the Azure SDK. And we're going to go find those and we'll make those hover. So you hover over this and it tells you what does SQL Server registrations whack delete mean. Now, you could say that's an obvious one, and it is. SQL Server registrations, well, that sounds like maybe it has to do with SQL Server, but is it an on-prem SQL server that you're registering for some sort of data movement? Is it an Azure SQL DB? Because there's also Azure Arc. So my point being, there are lots of different things that these could be, and so rather than guess, well, let's just know, right? So that's number 2, which is all about not crowdsourcing this information as much as starting with a base of information that we already have. Right, so this is Microsoft data that we should be able to get to fairly quickly, so we're going to do that. So those are the 2 big things, I think, and it sounds like we now have a kind of a 2B, which is we should also do some sort of a light mode CSS hack so that we can have a light version of this. But I don't know. Maybe it might be, if it's quick and dirty to do, we should try it. I mean, it is material. So presumably we could go drop some material CSS for a light theme material in there and it would sort of just work, right? I don't know. Okay, so let's get back to this Chrome extension. The third thing is not related to the Chrome extension, but more about getting connected with PIM, Privileged Identity Management, which is the thing that lets you elevate into a role. So it's like, you shouldn't be global administrator all the time, right? Like you shouldn't have that kind of standing access. In fact, you don't really want to have any standing access if you don't need it. So you want your access to be just what you need to do the tasks that you're doing day to day. And then if you need to do administrative stuff or operational stuff, you elevate, escalate, ascend, whatever you want to call it, but you elevate into that set of permissions, right? In AWS, these are like ephemeral sessions. In Azure AD, it's sort of the opposite. Instead of it being a throwaway session, it is a session where we give your user account those permissions for a period of time, and with certain restrictions. So part of PIM's whole thing is, well, if you want to be, say you want to be a user access administrator, well, you got an MFA to get that role, and you're only going to get it for like 2 hours, and it's got to be approved by 3 people, or something like that, right? So that's the kind of stuff that PIM lets you do, and being as this is all about permissioning, the next logical thought is, well, it'd be great if this and PIM sort of integrated together. Maybe here is where we say define some of these roles, and maybe we define them in PIM and they show up in here. But some way or even for like a deployment like service principal, if you're doing Terraform or Azure CLI or something, or ARM templates or whatever. You want to get that deployment, well, you need permission to do that. Bam, go elevate, let that service principal elevate, and away we go, right? So first 2 things are all sort of very extension-based. The third thing is going to be, because there is no API, will be most likely, let's look at the API calls as they're happening and then go and try to replicate them on our own. It's a hack, but it's a hackathon, so it seems to make sense to me. Okay, so let's go look at our code as it sits today, and sort of get our sort of plan of attack, I guess, for what's upcoming, right? All right, so let's get our project up here. I'll zoom into this a little bit more too, make sure everybody can see that. So let's go look at our EPM ext, and this is a super bare bones one. This is the same one that we had last week, if you were here with us last week. And it's got a manifest that tells us we've got a content script, and that's it. We got a content script. We got a little logo that isn't even the right logo. It's just a base free one from the Google sample. And these are the 2 sites we're going to work on, localhost and CloudNox. That's it. So these are the only 2 that we really need, that we're going to be doing any work in. We've got our content block here, and this is our content script that's going to go get injected. So here's my thought. And I'm always open to alternatives for this. My thought is, instead of doing a bunch of static stuff, and let me get my pen out here so I can draw some of this. So my thought is, instead of us doing some static stuff, why don't we instead do CSS selectors? So what we'd have, essentially, is a set of CSS selectors, right? Those CSS selectors would then have some content that's associated with them. Now, this is just a data array. Like you see this really simple object array up here. here's a CSS selector, here's the content that needs to go in it. With CSS selectors, we can use any of the 4,000 different things that are out there on the planet for parsing through those, and of course, straight up vanilla JavaScript will do it too. So we find our CSS selectors, we're going to do something to that. It could be to attach an event. We could, inject some content near it, around it, whatever, or, something else entirely. I don't know yet. It seems to me like the best thing for what we're trying to do, since we're just trying to put this, put a little thing over, like a little overlay. The overlay would just be a little box that pops up underneath it, and we inject whatever content we want in there. Right now, this is static, so it's just sitting on the page. Now, as you saw, some of those pages are kind of big. There's a dynamic aspect to that page too. If we look at the permissions, was it the permissions creep or whatever for this? I mean, we got 12,000 unused permissions here. Probably not something we're going to be able to ship on the page itself. I mean, maybe. It's possible we could. But likely we'll have, I think out of necessity, there's going to be some degree of there's going to have to be stored somewhere outside of the extension. A web service or something we're going to have to build. An Azure function, a Lambda, I don't care. And so we're going to have our extension. So this is our browser, right? Our extension's here, and on boot up, it's going to have to go out to some, it's going to go out and call to an API. That API is going to store our selectors and their requisite content. Now, another option might be, in addition to that, maybe one of the content is a sequence. Maybe there's like an ordering where you say, hey, there's first do this one, then do this one, then do this one. And so we can highlight those three in order or something. Like something be interesting, I think, down the road from more like a wizard, onboarding wizard style feel. So it's going to have to go out and get the selectors and content, right? And then when it comes back, this is going to go and crawl the DOM and start attaching either content, events, whatever. So that's one half. So this is all like the display side. So this is just for a user. Someone, our person here, our persona is a user who's using the web page and has the extension installed. Now, apparently you can't use your finger on this thing to scroll up, which is, I don't quite understand that. Does that mean we have to create a new page? What day? What year is it? Draw with finger. I don't want to do that. So can I move it up? There we go. So our first one is display, right? The second half is going to be authoring or annotating, right? So how do you annotate a site? And this is my original or initial thought, which I'm like, this is the part that's definitely like way less, I guess, refined in my brain in terms of how I've thought about doing this. My other thought for this one is, so in the Chrome extension itself, we'd have to have one of those, we'd have to have a page with a button. And that button would be something like, activate notes, or maybe there's a right click event or something like that we can attach to. But once you do that, we'd have to hijack, I think we're going to have to basically hijack all the click events because I don't think you can really meaningfully do a map, right? Because the map is going to change depending on zoom, screen orientation, all sorts of stuff. So we have to do it. We'll have to attach to an element somehow. So I think that's going to be, we're going to have to find the element and find something unique about that element, right? So what is the uniqueness of that element? Is it its href? Is it its CSS class? Is that CSS class auto-generated where it's going to have a different random identifier each time it loads? Because, of course, that's not going to work. Like, what can we find to attach to that thing? So we have to do a little bit of reconnaissance here to figure out what makes one of these elements unique. Because, all things the same, I'm not entirely sure, what that's going to look like. So we're going to have to dig into that a little bit. This is also a React UI. And so there's already been a little bit of drama around like, well, how do we attach the events at the right time? Is there a React event that fires? I don't know. So we'll have to find the elements that are unique, and then we'll have to give people a way to insert content. Now, then we get into the whole other question of moderation, which is if someone comes in here and does something horrible and disgusting, how do we make sure that nobody else is exposed to that? And this is a TBD. Not sure what we do here. Do we pin items and don't let them show up until we submit them? Do we do like a Reddit Stack Overflow style thing where we have like trusted mods who go in and say, hey, I can see this content and I'm going to make sure that it's safe? I don't know. Because then we get into like we got to log in and we got to have a user and a role system and all sorts of silliness, and it's a lot. It's a lot of extra work. I mean, maybe it's a requirement. I don't know. Maybe it's something we have to do because we can't have people leaving like gross messages all over stuff. So maybe we have to do that. I don't know. Maybe we just mark everything as unverified and push the onus back to the user, because I would imagine that there probably won't be many children using the EPM portal. So maybe that's okay. So we have to come up with some sort of a strategy for moderation. Do we gate the content? Do we, do we disclaim? Do we have moderators? I don't know yet. Is there, can we chat GPT it to figure out what it's how, or can we find, is there some sort of automated or more automated like basic moderation screening type stuff? I don't know. Separately, there's also a sort of a content system. So let's come back around to that. So at a minimum, in fact, I'm going to erase this because I put it in the wrong place. At a minimum, our Chrome extension is going to have to do, as part of that submission, find an element, find its unique, find whatever makes it unique, and then insert content associated with that selector, right? And then we're going to have to save that somewhere. Now, that brings up an interesting question, which is maybe we have a concept of a local note, and that's a note that's just for that user, and we could just store this in storage. And it can be whatever it wants, whatever it needs to be. Local storage, and we don't have to worry about moderation or any of that, right? Because if the user wants to read horrible, nasty things that they wrote, then I guess okay, suit yourself, right? And maybe the option is you can submit a local note and turn that into a shared note, we'll say, or a shared annotation. So we need a place to store these. Now, because we're talking about a web page and a little hover window or hover item, size-wise, I think these are going to be pretty small. And maybe it's just what we say is if you've got to write 4 paragraphs to explain what the analytics tab does or what the users tab does, then maybe you've already failed. Maybe you already blew it. You know what I mean? This is for someone who's been here to say, oh yeah, I used this and this is a thing that happened. Or, oh, this means this, or I did this and it was really helpful because I needed, I got this weird esoteric error and it's because you need to be this. It's just a way that for people helping people kind of thing. Not really, it's not official docs. The same way these lyric interpretations are not official lyric interpretations unless the artist has formally come in there and said that it is. So when it comes to our shared notes, I'm going to just take the assumption that they're going to be small. So let's say that these are going to be small, as in less than 10K. Because if you write 10K worth of things, again, now, do we go with just text or do we just let people do raw HTML? We obviously know which one of those is going to be much safer than the other. Of course, we don't want people writing arbitrary JavaScript into web pages they don't control, especially web pages that they don't control that they could then screenshot and make it look as if, the EPM portal said something horrible. I don't know. I'm kind of falling back to text for the moment. And maybe we have some simple things like, hey, here's your modal header, here's your modal text, and here's your modal, action. And maybe the action is something like it's an href to a docs page or to something else. Totally optional, don't even have to be there, but just something. Those are the three I'm thinking maybe to start, or maybe we start with HTML because it's going to be easy. Now, in terms of storing it cheaply, and then also retrieving it quickly, my thought is we're going to use probably a composite key, right? So let's think about how we store this. So I'm thinking for a composite key, we're going to have a hash of the page, and maybe it's the page without the path. It's the path, but not the query. From what I've seen so far, mostly through here, the queries are used primarily for things like filters. And so I don't think we'd necessarily want to, because like if you need extra information about, roles and policies, the system ID is not important to you, right? Like the fact that the auth system ID in here is this is not relevant for an annotation you might be making. So my thought is we take a hash of the page and path, right? So let's say host and path. We'll have to check on this one because I believe we may get these because this is C1. I'm pretty sure mine is, and my other tenant is C8. It is. So maybe host isn't, maybe it's a partial host. I'm not sure. So we take a hash of the page, page and the path. I'll put a question in here on, our host and how unique that's going to be or how much it changes. And the selector seems like the next best thing. So we take a hash of the page and the path and the probably just use a hash of the selector. Now, if we think about, because what we can do with this is we can put this into something like Azure Table Storage, and we could use, we use this as the key. And because we can use this as the key, we can use this as a retrieval. And a table storage retrieval, when you know the partition key, when you know the row key, the retrieval is the fastest way to get data out of data storage, or out of table storage. And it's stupid fast if you do retrievals. Now, if you got to go scan the table, it's stupid slow. So you don't want to do that. Unless you're using Cosmos, that costs a whole lot more money. I'm talking about straight up raw table storage. Key value pairs all day long. Reason for this, what is this? This spammy nonsense. Get this out of here. I don't have time for this goop. Get this out of here, pal. Yeah, Cosmos is fast, super fast, and you can query anything you want, but it's expensive. And for what we're doing, we don't have dynamic data. Because the thing is, we're not going to people aren't searching through, like, say, the content field, for example. People aren't going to be searching this at all, for starters. So what are we going to know when the page loads? We're going to know the page we're on, and this is the second question. So is it just the hash of the page as the partition? That seems to make the most sense to me, right? So that it actually doesn't. It might not make sense. I'm not sure yet. We got to think it through. So if the hash of the page is our partition, and then the hash of the selector is the row, then when a user comes to a page, a specific page, we'll say remediation whack roles dash policies. So they're going to come to this specific path, and we're going to go look up this partition, and in that partition, we're going to look for a specific row, which is the thing that they just hovered over, perhaps. And that's the thing. Do we preload all of these? Do we just say, hey, dump the whole partition or dump the whole hash of the page? Give me every annotation you got for this page. Or do we load them on demand? So as someone hovers over one of these other things. Now, of course, we're also going to have some of these that I think are going to be constant, but different problem. We won't prematurely optimize for that. So in here, we've got all of these different items. Let's go over to Azure for a sec, since I think there's more data in here. No, there's not. Let's go over here. Nope. I probably just don't have permission to see all this stuff, which I'm almost certain is why I don't get to see very much. Let's go back to configuration, because this is where you're going to be when we start. So this is probably a really good place for us to start. So in here, we've got, if we look at the path, we've got data sources, authorization systems, Azure, WAC list. So the question becomes, do we preload or do we download every annotation for this path when the user loads this path? It's option 1, right? So load annotations at page load, which is going to give us, we'll pay the tax up front, right? So we're going to download all these things and have them. And every time somebody hits one of the items and we go search for or we go and show our stuff, we're not going to have to go and search or hit any other API again, right? I think this is probably going to be the better route until we get to the point where you've got like, if we've got like 10,000 annotations on a page and we got to go download all of them, then we get into different strategies. I don't think we're going to have this problem, so let's not prematurely optimize. The second half of this is the row, which would be the hash of the selector. Now, pulling a whole partition is relatively fast because it's all in one thing, right? So if you're not familiar with like partitioning and we'll talk about table storage specifically, in table storage, there are a bunch of nodes, right, that run the table storage product, like Azure Table Storage. And this is pretty true for most of these. I think if I hold it, ooh, it turns into a nice pretty one. So we got all these nodes in here, right, all these servers. And each one of these nodes has got partitions on it, right? So this is partition 1, this is partition 2, whatever. And what that means is if you're going to go pull data from multiple partitions, you get a ton of throughput because you're pulling them from 2 different partitions, 3 different partitions, 8 different partitions, whatever, right? Now, if you can tell me exactly which row, this is your RK, your row key, if you can tell me exactly which row, going and getting one row is the stupid fast thing, right? But in our case, we're going to be pulling what I'm assuming is, I don't say a ton of data, but it's going to be more than one row. So what I'm thinking is we're probably going to drain a partition because the partition is going to be the page. And because I don't think we'd be in a position, at least not in a frequent position, where we would need to have, a single page load is going to pull more than that page's worth of annotations, right? What I'm wondering is doing a better throughput by finding a different key to use to partition that data. But I'm thinking that's premature at this point. Because a retrieval of a partition is faster than the retrieval of multiple partitions. But I don't want to query table storage for every single individual selector that we have. So maybe the plan to begin with, we keep it simple and straightforward and we deal with the problem when we get there. And we're going to partition by the hash of the page, and we're going to load all of our annotations for that page at page load. Because all we're going to do then is we're going to attach, or no, sorry, if I can erase this, we're going to attach, we're going to basically loop through our selectors and attach an event to each one. All right, so loop selectors from storage and then attach or inject content, right? Similarly, when we go back up, like when somebody's pushing up a new note, pretty simple there. All of our payload's really just going to be the selector and the page, right? And the content. We can also get really fancy, put the contents in something like blob, and then we can compose this, but that's a pain. The other thing we'd want to do, which I think would be really good here, is I think we're going to use SAS tokens. So when the Chrome extension loads, so let's say this is the user's browser, right? This is the user. What we're going to do is instead of proxying all those table calls through an API that we write, we're just going to let them go straight to table store. Because table store is stupid fast, and Microsoft started doing all the work of distributing it. And so, well, let's just go ping it. Like, let's just let our browser go directly to it, and then we don't have to deal with... Then our API load goes down dramatically, because are we really going to transform this data that much? I don't think so. And we're not getting data from a myriad of different sources, at least not for our user annotations. Now, for the permission annotations, maybe. So, credentials to table store. I mean, couldn't have teed the question up better myself. Thank you, Fuel. So glad you're here. So what we'll do for credentials, let me see, I feel like I should be able to show your comment. There we go. What about credentials to the table store? Fantastic question. So we're not going to store them in the browser because that would be bad, because then people could go and do our stuff, right? So what we're going to do, we're going to use a SAS token. And a SAS token is a shared access signature, right? And a shared access signature is essentially a signed... It is essentially a signed. It is very sassy. It's just SAS though. It's a signature on a URL, and the permissions are sort of embedded in that URL and then signed. So let's make it real for a minute. I'm going to use blobs because everybody's familiar with like a file sitting in a web page somewhere, right? Fuel going for gold. I'll tell you what, streaming alone is so different when you have other people, because there's just like so much activity. Okay. Let's say you want to access a file, right? And it's http blah 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 dot blob blah 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 dot blob dot core dot windows dot net whack some file dot txt or something, right? That item, that blob item, has like multiple ways or multiple things you can do to it. You can list it to show that you can list the items in the container to even show that there's something there. You can create a blob. You could write to a blob. You could delete a blob. You could, what are the other things you can do? You can append to a blob. And same with table store. Table store has a few different activities. It's like you can write a row, you can query a row, you can pull an entity, edit an entity, whatever. But ultimately, that collection of permissions is wrapped up into the URL, and it's time windowed. It's time boxed. So it's like for the next 10 seconds, anyone with this URL can go and download this thing or list this item in a table store, whatever. And after that, the URL doesn't matter. It's useless. If you've got an Azure subscription, you can generate these SAS URLs in the browser. The Azure SDK, of course, will do this for you too, and that's what we're going to end up doing. So we will end up with something like, say, our Azure function may go and spit these out. So let's go really quickly. I'll go over to the portal. Okay, so let's go look at a storage account. I hope I got one. Yeah, 425 show archive. Perfect one to use. So we got our containers here, right? And if we look at these containers, we've got the video archive. We'll just use this as one of them. Now, these are all a bunch of MP4s, but like if you were to go and look at this URL, right? This is a private blob. So like you can't come and just get this if you have the URL. Right? And even if I came over and tried to do this here, if I was to try to put this in, it's going to say, you can't get there. Specified resource doesn't exist. This is a straight up 404 because it doesn't exist to me because I'm an unauthenticated user, essentially, right? So, and if I want to give someone access to this blob, it's got this generate SAS. This is where it gets cool. So we give it a start time and an end time. There's also a concept of something called a policy. And a policy is where, like, if you're going to do this over and over and over again, you might create a policy that it's like, hey, it's valid for a week, and you can read, write, and list. And so you can just use that policy over and over again, as opposed to having to come in here and do it. on your own. But so we're going to pick a signing key. These are the keys that will generate the signature. So the thing that's going to generate SAS tokens has to have that. If you've got a policy, you can use a policy, and then you choose the permissions. Now, this is a blob. Let's say I want to let somebody read the blob only. That's all they can do with this, right? Or maybe I want somebody that can only delete the blob. They can't actually read the blob. They can only delete it, for example. So we'll pick the permissions we want. Let's do this and this. We'll just do read, and let's see. It's 1:10. Is that today? And it's 11:55. And we're going to make this valid. So this one looks like it's valid for what? 8 hours by default. Let's make it valid for, let's just make it valid for the next 5 minutes. 5 minutes actually may not be short enough because there is some clock skew that's in there. Allowed IP addresses. So if you only want to limit it to certain IPs, you can do that too. This is all part of it, be it a range, be it an individual IP. And then we've got, do you want to make it HTTPS only, whatever. So let's generate our SAS token. And here we go. If we look at this, you'll see, and this is an old show, so I guess if somebody was really like keen to go and download it, I suppose they could. I don't know why you would, because it's probably bad, but let's look at this SAS token really quickly. Because SAS tokens are, in my opinion, some of the coolest things that we got going on here. So, especially for this, because this is like this is how you get like to that cloud scale type stuff, right? Like, I want the back end that's going to run our stuff to cost us like nearly $0 a month. This is how we get there, right? Like, yeah, we're going to pay some egress on the table stores and whatever. But even if we were still doing this, like it's going to be way less than what we would spend in having an API app or a web app running an app service or something, or even like container apps, proxying these calls, and then they're all get funneled into this one call. Like, who's got time for that? So if we look at it, it's pretty straight up. We've got our permissions. That's essentially what permission is here. It's read. Our start time, 16:54. Our end time, noon. Only HTTPS. Which storage versions? This is an API version that's there. And then our signature. I don't know what SRB means. What is SRB? I don't know what SRB is. I don't know. I'm sure it's in the doc somewhere. But then here's our signature. So if I was to come in here and change this and say, oh, I want read and write, well, the signature's bad. It wouldn't work anymore. We wouldn't be able to get it. All the storage libraries will just accept this straight up. So like, I don't know if I've got Storage Explorer on here. I don't. But like all of the storage libraries, so like if you're writing code, if you've got Storage Explorer on your local machine, if you've got anything that can go and interact with Azure Storage, you can give it the SAS and it'll know what to do with it. AZ copy, all those things all know what to do with this. Like, I wrote a really simple app a long time ago, so it's really bad. So I know you're all going to judge me, but I'm used to that, I guess. No, I can't find it. It was to Azure Storage. Is that it? No, I don't remember what it was now, but it was SDK? No, it's too bad. I wish I could remember it. But what it would do was essentially what we were just saying, which is it goes and reads it uses the JavaScript libraries, and it goes and reads the SAS and connects to storage, and storage looks at that SAS and says, oh, signature's good, cool, you can go and see this. So so what we're going to do is generate these in code, server side, and then hand it off to the Chrome extension. So the Chrome extension calls, checks in. Here's my thought anyway, so that we can keep the load down, because I'm thinking we use something like an Azure function, because Azure functions, of course, are cheap, and you get 1 million executions per month and all that sort of stuff. So my thought is we take when the user hits a page, or sorry, when the user first fires up, they're going to call this API. Excuse me. The API is going to return to them a SAS. Now, the duration of the SAS is sort of inversely proportional to how secure it is. Of course, since this is all anonymous, security becomes a little bit of a different discussion. So then we get to the question of like rate limiting and all that sort of stuff. Sorry. I don't know what's going on. Ever since we moved, it's like a cough all the time. I got the flu a couple months ago. Me and my wife both had it. Man, it was awful. It was awful. It's snowing too, by the way. I just noticed. Anyway, so we're going to get the SAS token and we give it back to the Chrome extension on boot or when it starts up, maybe for the first time. How long it's good for? I'd say TBD. Excuse me, sorry. I'd say TBD. Maybe it's good for 24 hours. Because if we think about like the threat modeling behind that, what's the worst that somebody's going to do? If they have a valid SAS token? When is Mr. C coming back? Oh boy, that's a loaded question, Fuel. And I wish I had an answer. But alas, I think he's doing really well and really enjoying what he's doing. And so I am sadly not... I mean, I haven't talked to him in a while, not since before the holidays. And so, I don't know. He broke my heart. So, I don't know. I hope he comes back. But yeah, he's, I think he's really enjoying what he's doing. So I don't want to, we don't want to take that from him. So, but yeah, it's hard. So, anyway, if we threat model this thing out, try to figure out what's the worst somebody's going to do with our SAS token, probably Fuel. I mean, I understand the sentiment. That's true. Every cloud has a silver lining. Some of them are more visible to others, I guess. But I personally hope he doesn't get fired. Maybe he chooses to leave of his own volition and come back. It's possible. Or maybe we just do maybe we've got to figure out some kind of like a crossover to get Christos to come. Maybe just do a couple shows with us. He can do like a return tour, like when Bruce Springsteen goes out and tours again, He'll just come back and do like a month of shows with us and then peace again. So yeah, we can hype up a crossover stream, the whole thing. I don't know how much streaming he's doing these days. Like I don't know if he's got time to do it like he used to, but yeah, we gotta work something out. I do have a friend of mine who's going to be joining us in the next few weeks, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. But anyway, okay. If we think about the threat of somebody getting our access or getting our access token, getting our storage SAS token, the biggest thing they're going to be able to do with that is either cost us money, which is significant because if someone was feeling particularly difficult or unfriendly and wanted to go and just hammer that storage account over and over and over again, they'd charge us some transaction and egress charges. Which wouldn't be very fun. I mean, I'm not saying it would be super expensive, but I also would never want to challenge the internet to see how much traffic they could dump into something. I'm not even thinking straight with what I'm typing here, but let's see. Storage. Let's do tables, standard, local, because it doesn't really matter. We store 1,000 gigs. It doesn't really. So let's look at transactions. These are 10,000 units of transactions. Now I get my zeros all goofy pretty badly. So if someone, I guess, was feeling particularly unpleasant and they came and they were to do just absolutely hammer the storage service, they may be able to increase our costs somewhat on these. Now storage partitions are going to be rate limited. So there are certain targets that you can expect to hit for table storage. So we should have a little bit of that built in. Entities per second. So let's say we can get 20,000 entities of a K per second for an entire account. So, but only 2,000 per partition. So if somebody was to do 2,000 per second. Hang on a second. Oh no! Please don't start playing music. If someone was to do 2,000 requests per second, and they were just hammering it, that's going to be 336,000 transactions per second or sorry, per day. 2,000 per second times 60 seconds times 60 minutes times 24 hours. What's that? 3 zeros, 800s, 172 million per day. Or is that per hour? Where's my paper tape? So that's 2,000 times 60 times 60 times 24. So that's, what's that? 200 million, we'll say, per day. So they can do 200 million. We'll divide that by 10,000. See, when we get to this many zeros, I know people just like immediately pick that up, but I really have to think about it. I also don't get my left and right. I can't do those either. My 4-year-old's like, this is your right foot, Daddy. What's wrong with you? And it's like, well, I don't know. So if someone was to do 17,280 transactions, that would cost us $6 a day. I'm not saying that's expensive, but it's just shy of $200 if it went on forever. And then we have the question of egress. So network egress, on top of that, which, let's be honest, network is just, they call it bandwidth, not egress and not network. Sorry, bandwidth. So if we were to go internet egress from, we'll do, we moved. So I guess I kind of got to do what, like North Central or something now? I don't know. Presumably this isn't going to change if I choose North Central. It doesn't. Okay, good. So we're out via the network. That's fine. So what do we say? 2,000K per second. That was 172 million. We'll say 200 million. 200 million bytes, 200 million kilobytes is, how many gigs is that? 200 million KB is 200 gigs. Okay. So if we were to do 200 gigs of egress, which, again, this is like worst case. If we were to do 200 gigs of egress, that would be $8.70 per day. So $14, $15 a day, 30 days, $450 a month. So, like Fuel's saying, most enterprises, businesses, whatever, it costs more to go through the pricing exercise than to just pay it. $450 a month. But yeah, like for me, I don't really want to, I just don't want the attention that an extra $450 a month charge brings. So that's our threat model. I'd say our primary one, because we're not storing private information in here. We're not storing anything, whatever. So, it's not, I don't think it's super, super risky into the world type thing, but I don't know if I'd necessarily want to completely ignore it. So we've got, if it was 24 hours, the thing is, anybody's going to be able to come and get one. So the alternative is to rate limit. But once you rate limit, then when we get into rate limiting, we have to rate limit it somehow, and we rate limit it with something like Azure API Management. And so now all of our great scalability that we just got into, we now lose because API Management isn't particularly inexpensive, not to mention now we got to proxy everything through, right? So one of these at 7 cents an hour, which this would only be one, right? And this is a developer one, which you can't even use in prod. Let's call it basic. Basic was $150. Consumption, if we had 17,280 of those, we're looking $346 a day, which is insane. In fact, it's not even that. So it's $450, or it's a bunch of extra infrastructure to keep somebody from abusing it. I think maybe we put some Azure Monitor alerts in. Like here, yeah, that's a good one right here, right? We put in a budget rule. Maybe we put in some Azure Monitor alerts, and if we see something go up bananas, we'll we'll come back and sort it out. Okay, so that means I think 24 hours is probably good. I mean, we could go longer if we want, because if someone was to, I mean, because you're going to get one every time you come over anyway. So who cares, right? So we'll start with 24 hours for that SAS token. And that's going to let somebody, I'd say maybe we start and say this is a read only, right? So this is just for read and annotations. Because for writing, we're going to have to do it a little bit differently. I'm actually thinking that for writing annotations, we may have to do a sign up. I think that in order to create an annotation, I think I'm okay to say you have to sign in. Reason being that I don't want people to edit those that are not theirs. Now, the other option might be that we do something like one-time key, like, hey, if you want to come back and edit this later, you either need to create an account or you got to have the sign-up key. But like, that's a bunch of extra work. So, sign up, log in. Amazingly enough, I happen to know a guy who can help us there. So I think we can get login set up fairly quickly. But I'm pretty sure that for writing the annotations, we're going to have to do some kind of authentication, right? So that's the basic plan. Who's ready? Who's ready to do this? Like I said earlier, I want you to go sign up for the hackathon. I have a team, or I don't have a team. I'm not entirely sure how it works yet. Go sign up for the hackathon, because the hackathon is the thing that gets you access to do the hackathon, and then there you can join a team. So when you get there, it's going to look something like this. I am under the filter of looking for teammates. So you can look for me, and I have to figure out how to create a team, so I don't actually know just yet. What are you sending me, Fuel? I feel like we've all known each other long enough. Okay. Thank God. I didn't know what I was going to open. There's a whole lot of trust there. What is our cubism? This is pretty cool. What is this? Oh. I like this a lot. I think this looks awesome. Yeah, look at that. Looks amazing. Oh no, what have I done? Okay, I don't know what happened, but I'm pretty sure my browser just died on me. So give me a second to get. Give me a second, I'll get back. But Fuel, whatever you sent me caused my browser to blow up. So I mean, it looked cool. The cubes did look very cool. I'm a big fan. I did like those quite a bit, but it did also cause my browser to die. So I hope none of these tabs are offensive. Good, they're not. Okay, so back at the EPM hackathon itself, at the hackathon sign up, I'm listed here as looking for teammates. When you sign up, it's pretty straightforward. Like, just you talk about the stuff that you like and what kind of skills you have. And if you filter to looking for teammates, you should be able to find me. And I think if you press the button next to me, I believe you can, request a team up right here. So like, I got my buddy Nick, and let's see, is Nick looking for teammates? No, we're gonna go find him anyway. Nick, Mr. Ryder, who is our sort of our resident EPM expert. So, he doesn't have a button, so I can't request to team up with him, but you can request to team up with me. And we're gonna. I want to get this done. Like, I want to see how far along we can get this and see how much we can run with it. So, I will figure out how to create a team, and then what we'll do is in Discord, the Discord will have, it's real-time ray tracing. Link to that site. I'll put it here in the chat. That'll probably make more sense. It's 425.show/EPM-hackathon. There's a button here. I can make it show up on the screen too, so you can go take a look at it. So there's your hackathon sign up link. So we're going to create a team. Our team, I'm thinking, is going to start here. So we got to create a GitHub project and like, I'd say maybe put a few work items in, and that'll be the things that get worked on, which I'm going to work on later today. And then we'll get to work. So that, let's go over to GitHub right now. And that way, anyone who wants to contribute, we'll go ahead and get a new one. Let's go ahead and get a new one cranked up here. Uh-oh. I'm always a little sketched out when I start to see too many midday Outlook notifications. Makes me wonder, like, what are they doing? Okay, I'm going to fork this one. And I'm going to call this one... Oh, what do you mean? I can't fork it more than once? What is this? Oh, get a different name. Let's call this one... I'm going to call this one EPM Genius. Yeah, send that link to your team, Fuel. Yep, that's what to do. And that way they can sign up. So I should be able to create... Oh, I can't create... So you can't create two forks with different names. Interesting. And you can't fork your own repository. Also interesting. So what do you do? How do you... I guess I have to do... I don't want to do a separate branch, so that's lame. Okay, I have to figure out I'll have to figure out the best thing to do about this. Because I've already got this one forked over to 425 show. I want to have a fork for mine. I guess I could maybe make it a template repository and I'll create a new one from that. Let's do that. Template. Okay. So now, do I need to save that or did it already save? I think it already saved. So if I come here, I should be able to use this template, create a repository. Bam. All right, let's go. I'm going to call this one EPM Genius. And this is going to be our submission for the EPM hackathon at 425.show whack EPM hackathon. Okay, that's a public one. We're going to create it. And so now we're going to have some fresh code that we can all go and work on. Anyone who's interested in joining my team or like working on this with me, I'm going to put some issues and stuff in here today. I will do this and put this link here in the chat. And yes, the judges are out there, and I think the judges are even marked. So you can go out and social engineer them a little bit. That would, I think that'd probably be a lot of fun. So yeah, send that link to your team, the EPM link. If you want to join, if you want to like work on the stuff that I talked about today with a group, then cool, come on out. Request, and the hackathon thing requests that I can request for me to do the thing. Or that you want to meet up. And then we'll use this repository as our main repository. I think I might create a project here. Totally unrelated. Anyone with a Mac or a wireless, like a Logitech wireless mouse, my wireless mouse just kind of goes, it just it jumps, and I can't use it. It drives me nuts. All right, let's create a new project in here. So I think really basic stuff will be simple. We're going to have the first project we'll call, it isn't a magic mouse, it's a trackball. Ergo MX, but it's charging because it's dead, although I think it's probably charged by now. I love this thing, and the thing is, it's like driving a stick because nobody will steal it because everyone hates them. So the first one here will be the display. I'll call this the extension. We'll call this page content display. And this will be all the stuff related to making the page show up, or making the content show up, I guess. So that'll just be just the extension stuff. And for the extension in the content scripts, we need to do, the first thing will be, we need to attach to selectors. And then we need to build the content window or, basically the HTML element to show the content. And then I guess I should change this to say attach events to selectors. attach events to selectors. So I'm going to fill these in. I'll get these all sort of filled in and whatever, and try to get these sorted out so that we've got a little bit, I guess, of some kind of thing. We'll have an extension for the page. We'll have a project for the page. What is the untitled one? I don't even know what this is. Oh, those are in total. I got it. Okay. I haven't used projects too much just yet. So we'll have another one for, I think, for storage, right? Because that'll be the base. That's like, those two things are really the two basic things that we need for this to get up off the ground. So we'll call this EPM Genius Storage. I'll just call it the store, I guess. Probably should name these things like an adult, but whatever. And so let's see, we've got to get our infra ready. Deployed for table storage. We need to build a SAS generating function, of which there should be plenty out there. It doesn't have to be a function. It could be a function. It could be a logic app. It could, it could be whatever. It could be a lambda. I don't really care. Whatever. Let's see. What else we got to do for that? That might be it. I mean, we got to write all the code. So have a little simple repo in the extension to fetch the data, and we probably want to define the super basic schema for annotation content. So what what we're going to have. I'm thinking we have a header, a body, and maybe a href, or maybe an href to start. And then I think this is just for reading, right? Like, I'll just look at reads, and we can come back and do the writing later. So yeah, I think we got a couple projects we can go and get started on. I'll finish filling these out today. Make sure this thing is in the thing. We can convert these to issues and dump them into the repository. And we can. It's probably best we're going to have multiple. I'd say we're probably going to have multiple repositories, right? So we'll have one repo for the Chrome extension and one for any sort of backend API. Although this API should be so simple that I really don't think we maybe just put it into a folder. I don't know. The Chrome extension is all JavaScript. How we do the SAS generator, I don't know. Obviously .NET and functions works. JavaScript and functions, Azure Functions work. Is there anything else out there that's new and fun and neat that we haven't done that we could do for SAS generation? Because SAS generation is a fairly defined operation. I wonder if we do something like a Cloudflare worker maybe, or I don't know. Might be kind of cool. Because Cloudflare's got some storage too. I wonder if we use that instead. I don't know how expensive it is though. Somebody might get mad about that around here too. Maybe I should be careful. I feel like there's something else. I mean, because there's all the mainstays that have been around forever, like Heroku and like these awesome platforms that we've got. I'm trying to think. Anyway, figure out what to use for. Oh wait, we've already got that, so we don't even need this one. So I'll just escape and hopefully it goes away. Okay, so I'm gonna work on these today. Thursday we got a guy called Tom coming on the show at 11 a.m. Eastern normal time. Tom's going to come on and talk to us about Azure Information Protection, and it sounds like there's some SDK updates to the .NET SDK that he's going to be talking to us about, showing us, kind of giving us a deep dive about the SDK and some other stuff that's going on. So that'll be really cool. Next Tuesday, we're going to get back into this. Now, We'll definitely be back next Tuesday to work on this. We may try to get some of this. In Thursday after Tom is here. So if you want to join for that, it'll be about noon. But I'm going to try to do a little bit more this week, next week, basically till the end of January. We'll try to do maybe more than 2 streams a week on trying to get some of this code done. And of course, we'll all be in Discord. So make sure you join the Discord. We can talk about code. And if you want to go take some of these issues, or if you've got some issues that you think are up for grabs, or things that you want to work on, or parts that you think are really cool, be sure to let us know, and that way we can make sure everyone who wants to work on something has the opportunity to do so. But yeah, so I think it's going to be kind of a busy January. We've also got one of our sort of pretty senior product members is going to be coming to the show in February to do a deep dive on conditional access. So we'll get more information about that as it comes along. But yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty pumped to do this one, and I'm also really excited. We're gonna have to take a day and explore the API for our resource providers too. In fact, let's go add that project here just so that it's here, and this will be for EPM Genius. Explore Azure, at least resource providers for info. So we're gonna have to probably need to do a little something about this. We're gonna have to find the docs or metadata for Azure RBAC. That could be disassembling some of the CLI assemblies, some of the SDK assemblies. That could be maybe there's some data out on at the REST endpoints for all those different providers. I don't know. We're gonna have to go find those docs and metadata, and then we'll have to figure out how we size and store. Part of me thinks we could run in a cool local mode where we can just use your local Azure CLI installation, and then you don't have to be connected to anything at all, and it would just sort of always work. Always, of course, being relative term. Or we could just push it into the same pipeline that all of our other annotations are going to go in, and then we just treat it the same way. We just generate a bunch of data that we dump into table store. I don't know. So we'll have to figure out how to size and store that. And our only other projects are going to be the authoring and login side of this, which I'm going to make really generic, so we can come back to it later and make it more specific. So authoring, login, storage, moderation, etc. So no better way to do that than to just hand wave it all off into the corner like baby. So, okay, friends, thanks for hanging out with me today. Like I said, we're trying to stream on this a lot more this month, since I want to actually get this done and ship this by the end of the month. Those of you who've been with us for a while know that we have lofty goals, and we don't hit them very much. So I'd love for this one to actually make it out the door. Anyway, yeah, this is what we're working on. Again, be sure to join Discord, join the hackathon. The hackathon page, by the way, will tell you everything. It has links to all the stuff you need, like your there's a getting started, I think. As soon as you sign up, there will be a thing that tells you on the side, join Discord, get your free M365 tenants, all the links to all the stuff are all here. Get your Azure account if you want one. And then digital badges are one of the things that you're going to get. It's one of the, just registration gifts, I guess you would call it that. You have to opt in. Privacy and all that sort of stuff. You got to opt in if you want that sort of stuff. And then we got a team here that'll get it for you. So let's figure out who are we going to go raid today. Mr. Fritz gave us a shout out the other day, so maybe we should go to Mr. Fritz. There's also Mr. Lingstorff. I guess we'll go see what our good friend Jeff is up to. But thank you all for coming and hanging out with us. Keep an eye on the Discord, I guess, because we'll announce our upcoming shows there, and we'll try to stream as much as we can this week to kick this hackathon off right. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I actually get to write some code, which I haven't gotten to do in a long time, sadly. So yeah, I think it's going to be fantastic, if I'm being perfectly honest. So, okay, let's get raid, friends, and I will see you back here maybe as early as tomorrow, but definitely on Thursday with Mr. Moser from AIP. Take it easy. See ya.